My name is Johanna Wagstaffe. I'm a meteorologist and an earth scientist. Every day, I see the effects of climate change through my work, a relentless cycle of extreme weather, terrifying storms, deadly heat domes, wildfires, droughts. But I remain in awe of the natural world and how it finds ways to adapt. And that's what we explore on Planet Wonder. All right, what to wear today? Go into the old wardrobe, not bad, a little warm. There we go, pop a color, business casual vibe. That's not quite right. I do have a lot of clothes. And I know the production of clothes creates a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. Too casual, back it up. There we go. We also know that organic fibers take a lot less to produce. So that's got me wondering, how is going back to natural fabrics the way to be fashion forward in our climate crisis? Welcome to one of my favorite thrift shops, and get ready to see a side of Johanna I have tried to keep hidden as I fought the weather girl stigma for decades. The Johanna that loves clothes. I said it. A recent report found that a planet-friendly wardrobe should consist of just 74 garments, with new purchases limited to 5 items per year. Houston, we have a problem. Here's the other truth. According to the UN, the fashion industry is responsible for 10% of global emissions. That's more than aviation and shipping combined. And the World Bank suggests that global clothing sales could go up by 65% by 2030. Most of fashion's environmental impact comes from the use of raw materials. Synthetic fibers like polyester require 342 million barrels of oil every year. Add to that the chemical dyes and the massive amounts of water used. Making one pair of jeans, for example, uses about 20,000 bottles of water. Fast fashion is only adding to the problem by stepping up the pace of design. Collection launches are no longer seasonal. New inventory is pretty much constant. And as a result, we're buying more, 60% more than in the 2000s, and throwing away more. And get this, less than 1% of used clothing is actually recycled into new garments. So what if I just buy all the secondhand clothes and we only make new garments that can actually be recycled, organic fabrics? To find out if there's a real solution here, we met up with Rynn Zhang, who studies materials engineering, to learn more about how important the textiles themselves are when it comes to climate change. We started our chat, fittingly, on a rooftop garden at the University of British Columbia. When did you first, become interested in the fashion industry and its impact?
I live right next to a mall, and so I had gotten into a habit back home of just, going for a casual walk and picking up something from the store and coming home and liking it for a week or two and then just forgetting about it. And
story of my youth too. Yep.
right. Okay, it's not just me.
No.
And then it was COVID, and I remember watching a documentary called The True Cost. And this movie really highlighted not just the cost, the price that we pay for our clothes, but also the social and environmental cost that it takes to get the cheap clothing to our hands. And that was not something that I wanted to continue to contribute to more.
And from that moment, you made small and bigger changes?
Yes, and that led to my materials engineering degree, because everything around you is made up of some kind of material. There's so much room for improvement to make the process of making clothes more kind to the environment, to the people, to everybody.
Okay, let's go down the rabbit hole. To attempt a brief history of textiles is to attempt the history of civilization. It's no small feat, and it's a history as wrapped in culture, class, and gender politics as it is in science and exploration. So we better get started. In the beginning, Humans wore animal skins as clothes, but around 11,000 years ago, we began growing crops for textiles. And we could truly regulate our body temperatures as we migrated to new climates. Fibers that had to be spun into yarn that would then be looped, woven, knitted into fabrics. And that changed everything. I love your color palette. One of the most famous examples of textile production, silk breeders in China, that eventually led to the Silk Road trade route, 8,000 kilometers connecting China to the Mediterranean. Meanwhile, Europe in the Middle Ages made great progress in the working and dyeing of wool, which was used for outerwear with linen close to the skin. Then came tailoring, buttons and lace, which drew textiles closer to the body, and with that, the rise of fashion. And of course, it was in part the demand for cotton that drove the transatlantic slave trade. Great Britain watched the outcome of the American Civil War closely to see what it would mean for their cheap supply. During the Industrial Revolution, fabric making shifted to mass production, and assembly lines and sewing machines streamlined the process. Labor issues have gone hand in hand with textile production ever since. In recent decades, it's fast fashion, globalization, and consumerism that have taken the spotlight. This is but a mere sampling of the history of the world, textiles, a history that reflects the technologies, cultures, and customs of civilizations through time. Rynn, how would you describe the fashion industry's carbon footprint?
It's massive, to say the least, and it's a lot larger than what a lot of people think. And just as an example, if you look at the where your shirt is made from, it's probably made from a country in the global south, and most global south countries do rely on coal or fossil fuels as their main source of energy. So that's where the main amount of carbon emissions come from. Where the material is sourced, where it comes from, how it's made, even the people who are making it. There's a huge social and environmental impact there. For example, 10 years ago, it was the Rana Plaza incident that happened in Bangladesh, and it unfortunately killed about 1,100 workers and injured 2,000 more. And this was just a really big wake-up call to the world.
So we've just gone from a beautiful rooftop garden, organic material all around us, to where are we now?
So we are currently inside of a electrospinning lab that produces nanofibers.
Okay, and this is one of the technologies that exists right now that might be a solution to fashion and climate change. Can you tell us more about these technologies?
Right now there's two main processes that clothing can be recycled in, and so that's mechanical and chemical. And so this lab focuses mainly on chemical processes, which dissolves the textiles into a solution and then repurposes it from there. Whereas the mechanical side, they will shred the clothing most likely and separate the fibers to respin. However, the mechanical recycling process, you rarely can get back to the same quality of fibers as it was before, because when you're shredding, you're decreasing the length of the fibers, making it much harder to respin to the same quality of yarn as it was before.
Is this becoming chemical more popular? Like, where are we at with it in the world?
So we're currently in the process of researching upcycling of cotton waste in this lab, and we're trying to turn that into nanofibers. And nanofibers are fibers that are about 500 times smaller than the diameter of your hair, and it has a lot of really cool applications like tissue engineering and water filtration. And we call this process upcycling because in mechanical recycling, you decrease the quality of the fibers, so you're downcycling it. Whereas here, you're upcycling, you're increasing the value.
Can you show us the process?
First, we have little pieces of cotton that's cut up and we put into a solution. This can be a typical acid that can dissolve the textile and get rid of all the natural dyes and artificial dyes that are on there to strip it completely. And then you put it into a syringe, and then you place the syringe right over here, and the machine turns on, and you slowly push the syringe, and as as the syringe pushes, it ejects a very, very thin, like a thread almost, that goes onto this machine, which is spinning, and it collects the fiber all across this spindle.
You've got an example of what would come out of this?
Yes. So we have it here, and you can see it's very fine, almost impossible to see with the eye.
It does look like silkworm material.
Yeah. It's very soft, very delicate. So we're trying to figure out what combination, what works best to create the best material properties on these fibers.
So put the beet down and you'll bring it like
yeah.
the frame. Yeah. And yep.
Stay tuned where we talk about how beets in your poo scares you even when you know it shouldn't. Welcome to Backyard Cooking with Joe, where we only use beets. Actually, it's experiment time, and we're going to use beets to dye textiles, just like I did in grade 8 when Amber Novak and I won our first science fair award. All you need is fresh beets. If you grew them in your own garden, even better. I'd say sort of a couple of beets per garment. For an added level of danger, I'm wearing white, but you can dress accordingly. Add the beets to a pot of boiling water and let simmer for about an hour. Just pretend this is boiling water. So I'm hoping that this white secondhand cotton sundress is going to be a very hot shade of pink red. I'm gonna dip it in here. Get it completely covered. So the darker the color, the longer you'll want to keep your garment in your beet concoction. For a lighter pink, just a couple of hours, and for that deep red, you might want to keep it a full 24 hours. Afterwards, rinse it in cold water and then iron it to lock that color in place. Like any good cooking show, I pre-dyed an item of clothing, one that I'll probably need very soon. It's a girl. So go nuts with beets in your own home, and tune in next week when I turn these leftover beets into brownies. Rynn, how is going back to natural fabrics the way to be fashion forward in the climate crisis?
Natural fibers have a lot to add to the conversation. Even just getting to know what material you're putting on your skin makes us more conscious, more aware of our purchases. It also provides opportunities for countries where farming is their main source of income to boost their economy, but at the same time, we also have to be mindful of the trade-off between using land to grow food versus clothes.
The source for organic material can be found in unexpected places. Lil, show us your laboratory, please.
Our current project is basically growing kombucha leather. It's a yeast and bacteria symbiotic relationship. So you put the sugar in there, and then the yeast is able to take that sugar and then convert it into material that the bacteria can use to make the kombucha. A pellicle grows, which is essentially just a thin layer of cellulose. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And we basically harvest that, and then we dry it, and then it turns into something like this.
Amazing. So this is a very liquid form right now.
Yes.
How long does the process take from going from liquid to from harvesting the cellulose?
All it has to do is just dry out and kind of evaporate the water, right?
Oh,
so
okay.
Right now we are air drying it, so it can take up to 2 weeks, but we're also looking into maybe oven drying it, which would be a lot quicker. So after it's dried up, you can kind of see like, it looks very leathery, doesn't it? Yeah, of course, here you go.
Oh, it totally feels like leather.
Yeah, and it's very strong actually as well.
It's like leather, but I also would eat it.
Yeah, we often talk about that, but I would advise against it.
It smells like kombucha.
Yes.
From what I know.
Because it is water-based, it's not actually waterproof. So what we've done here is we've kind of taken beeswax and we've kind of just ironed it on, and it makes it, here if you touch it, it's less sticky.
Yes.
You can already kind of tell that it's a more...
It feels stronger too.
Yeah, for sure. This one is actually one of our leather wallet prototypes.
Amazing.
Yeah, and so you can see here there's actually layers of cotton in between. And how we did that was, all we had to do was kind of take this cotton cloth and infuse it into the blend, and it actually grows around the cotton.
Oh, wow.
The cellulose grows around the cotton, yeah.
What are the advantages of using kombucha?
So it's Biodegradable versus what's on the market right now is very plastic based and it can flake very easily. In the kombucha brewing process, this is a byproduct that is just discarded, right? So it's actually very beneficial in that sense of you're not really adding anything. It's already pre-existing industries that you're just taking a byproduct of and kind of reusing it, right? Into something that's very useful and helpful.
So that's where the tricky part comes in is how do we manage our resources, right? Many parts of the world are already in a shortage of food and water. And so if we use those resources for clothing, what's going to happen to those places that are already feeling the effects?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. Can you remind us what the difference between organic textiles and what most fast fashion is made of?
So most fast fashion is made from polyester, which is a type of plastic, and that is sourced from fossil fuels. And oftentimes it's blended with cotton, which technically is natural per se, but cotton is one of the most water and land intensive resources. And so when you mix those two together, it is a killer combo.
Interesting, because we think of cotton as being organic, but it takes so much water. Combine that with a resource-intensive plastic material, and it's what most fast fashion is made of.
Exactly, and even looking at the recycling process, it's extremely difficult to recycle because chemically speaking, they have two different melting points. So organic fibers are biodegradable, and under the right conditions, they can be compostable as well. So that's where we're hoping to improve infrastructure to be able to compost and biodegrade more natural fibers.
Can you tell me about your outfit, your look?
Yes, Doc Martens, patent leather, Mexican vintage. My friend Debbie gave it to me. Yeah, it's just everything that vintage is more interesting, I find.
You both look amazing.
Most of my stuff right now is from the 60s. So the dress is like 60s polyester, very ginger from Gilligan's Island. The jewelry is kind of a mix. The world already has so much stuff crammed in everywhere that we might as well just reuse what we have. And I think a lot of things like this is very polyester, so this should not be made again because of that. But it's already here, and it's not gonna go anywhere, so we have to use it.
So at the end of the day, how much is just choosing to buy less the only real solution?
In one of my courses, I learned about this group called the Use Less group. And they're a group of researchers and scientists based out in Cambridge. And they have a philosophy that there's two main solutions to tackle the climate crisis. One is to create technologies that promote clean energy. And the second is to reduce our need for clean energy. And they say that the first solution should actually be the supplementary solution to the second one, which is just using less.
What about more is more if everything is sustainable? That's what this TikTok influencer is all about.
I've always loved fashion. I've always been a very creative person, but I would say within the last 3 to 4 years, which is around the time when I first started creating content on TikTok, is when I really kind of found my personal style and really became a lot more conscious of sustainability within the fashion industry. I started thrift shopping and secondhand shopping during high school, and I feel like that really helped me figure out my personal style. It really helped me avoid being fed trends. And secondhand shopping is also keeping all of these unused, unworn, or unwanted garments from building up in landfills in third world countries. Always shop as sustainably as you can and never care what other people think, because at the end of the day, you dress for yourself and no one else.
And so that's the philosophy I know you buy into. How does that work in a world of fast fashion?
It's extremely difficult, and I think it starts with acknowledging that we do live in a world of fast fashion, and we do live in a world that really perpetuates the idea of wanting more and wanting the new thing and fitting in and following trends, but it's important to be self-aware of that. And when you're falling into those traps, look beyond just the value, the price tag, you know? Look for emotional value. Was this my grandmother's? Was this my best friend's? Once you start adding emotional value, that item will have so much more meaning to you.
Keeping cloth out of landfills means they either get recycled or reused. Before fast fashion, the practice of handing down clothes was more the norm. And for some cultures, the hand-me-down tradition goes beyond passing items down to your little brothers or sisters or the neighbors next door. It can cross oceans in the form of a gift. Filipino immigrants have a tradition of shipping items to their relatives back home. These are called Balak boxes. In Tagalog, the term Balak means return to one's country. Usually every Christmas, Filipinos living all over the world send these gift boxes. They often contain hand-me-down clothes. The t-shirts and jeans are brands that are hard to find in the Philippines, or they're too expensive. This is such a common practice, there is a shipping industry dedicated to Balak boxes. And for those in the Philippines, it's also a way to reconnect. The sentiment is passed on to those outgrown shoes and shirts. Their loved ones are halfway around the world, but wearing the hand-me-down sweater from a cousin or uncle. Recycling and reusing also means love.
A bit of a confession. I like to think of myself as a sustainable maximalist. Everything I buy is thrifted, but I buy a lot. I get a lot of enjoyment out of fashion. Can you not necessarily make me feel less guilty, but is there a place for that term that I may have just made up?
There are other ways that we can express ourselves through ways that might not look like consuming and buying things and purchasing and compiling.
Rynn, I think you've inspired me, and I'm going to really remember that word compiling next time I'm thrifting. So Rynn, the solutions are out there. How hopeful are you that we'll be able to implement them in time to make real change?
As a Gen Z, I'm really hopeful. And I say that because I think that my generation is one of the most self-aware and compassionate generation.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, and I think that we're sick of the status quo. You know, we see the injustice and we really want to change that.
In North America, an estimated 10 million tons of clothing ends up in landfills. Enter the circular economy, a market framework that encourages reusing and recycling, and in the case of textiles, repairing. To reduce the carbon footprint of the fashion industry, it could be a matter of making your clothes last longer. Meet Tess Goebel and Eris Grutter, the co-owners of an East Vancouver clothing repair studio, all together. Get it? They repair everything from knitted cardigans, jeans, to leather boots.
I think that you can buy new shoes every 6 months to a year, but when you choose to repair it, you're making a choice that these are my boots and I want to keep wearing them.
Alltogether is one of the businesses working to make clothing repairs easier and more accessible. But as the circular economy grows in popularity, so does the demand for clothing repairs. And experts say brands need to take ownership of that, offer repairs or use longer lasting material. Repairing and resewing is definitely a greener alternative to throwing out clothes. And in the end, you get to keep all your faves forever. You went to the last climate change conference in Egypt as a delegate. What was it like to be there with this message with people all around the world?
Extremely eye-opening, extremely humbling and empowering, just to know that I'm not alone in this fight. I mean, we are the next world leaders, right? And so I think that as time goes on, there is potential for us to make those changes once we reach those places and positions of power. And I think that we need to continue to hold fashion companies accountable to what they do, and to push for that accountability and to provide incentives to make sustainable practices profitable. I think that's really going to make a difference.
So it'll take individual action, but also big changes from the corporations.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
So organic over synthetic, but we also have to think about the entire life cycle of our clothes, where they've come from, how long we wear them, and where they go next. To quote the late great designer Vivienne Westwood, buy less, choose well, and do it yourself.
The very latest invention, my Spider-Man suit. This is my firefighter suit, and I can go and fire, real fire. The white cat method and this white spacesuit is my favorite.
That one is the best one. You look great in it.
Yeah.